Welcome everyone to today's session, which is how we were going to manage AKS application using Argo CD. All right, the Autopilot Cluster. All right, so welcome to this session. My usual colleagues, Chidebere and Promise Nwachuku, are MVPs also at MVP Summit, and they are not available today. But I will be here to, walk us through this amazing topic. Let me start with like a very quick question. Has anybody ever made a change directly on Kubernetes cluster? Maybe scaled up something, edited a config map, and later wondered, was that change actually tracked anywhere? You know, that's exactly what we are trying to solve today. Today, we are going to introduce something that makes it that very possible, a system that continuously watches our Git repositories and forces the cluster to match exactly to our desired state defined in the Git repository all the time automatically. This is where I call the autopilot cluster, where AKS manages itself using Argo CD. All right. So let's dive right into this session and explore how this is possible. Um, if you see if there's a manual change, like for instance, make a change in the cluster directly, let's be honest, we all have done this before. I mean, a quick troubleshooting session, some quick changes, scaling replicas here and there, scaling up, scaling down. I mean, doing like we'll say different changes to probably troubleshoot issues or just to work on some things and we want to make some change. It feels fast. I mean, let's be honest, we've done this before probably, but it creates serious problems. All right. What are the problems? There are no audit trails, no rollback, and worst of all, you can even lose visibility to what actually is running. Now, let's imagine a production outage and no one really knows what has changed. That's where we enforce one simple rule. Git must be the only one place where changes originate from. It is not in Git. It shouldn't exist in the cluster. If it's not in Git, it shouldn't be in the cluster. So we take Git as our one source of truth, and whatever is been there is what is being applied to the application. So basically, we are saying for all the changes we are going to be making, we want to go through only what has been defined with Git, making it this very one source of truth. This is what we are trying to fix here. So, what exactly is Argo CD? You know, what is Argo CD? Argo CD is a Kubernetes native continuous delivery tool that runs inside AKS cluster. What it does is it constantly watches our Git repository, typically every 3 minutes, and kind of ensures that the cluster matches exactly what the Git declares. Not just deploy once, like we have in CI/CD pipelines, right? But we are saying continuously, all the time, watching the desired state, the one source of truth being the Git, and continuously enforcing the sync. All right. If anything is being changed manually without going through the Git, right? Argo CD detects this as a drift and it says, what? I'm going to have to fix this. And it does that, right? So that's what we call drift correction. And this is why Argo CD wins the race within this kind of issues. So now, I mean, we're also going to be looking at these three Argo CD components just to have like a kind of a bit of understanding to how its architecture works. All right. So the first one I'll talk about here is the API server. What is this component? It's what users applications or users generally used to interact with the API, with the server itself, right? So we can probably go through interacting using a friendly UI. Friendly UI, okay. It could as well be a command line interface, right? But it gives you that entry point for a user to interact with the Argo CD itself, right? So it's called the API server. And now, have you wondered what components or how does Git actually how does Argo CD actually get the desired state? It has a component known as the repo server. What it does is it clones the Git repos. It sees it within its component called repo server, right? And this repo server sees the desired state of the application, how you define this application, how you want it to be, its right configuration, and it stores that information in it. And lastly, here we have the application controller. What's this? Is an enforcer. It watches the repo server, it gets this information, the manifest, and checks its current state of what you have defined in the manifest of the application. And if there's a drift, it enforces the state and corrects this drift. So, with this, we can see that Git always wins, right? That's the idea, that's the mindset. Okay, so we go to the next slide here, and we'll still kind of emphasize on the component, all right? The one loop, the three component, the one loop, the other components, but we want to look at the loop, right? The first most important thing is to understand that the loop here simply refers to the reconciliation loop. It is a very essence of GitOps. Watch the repository, sync it. The loop continues, watching, syncing, watching, syncing. That's the way it should be, right? So the first one here, we've already explained this before, is the Argo CD server. Okay. So it clones the repository, the loop. You can see that loop starting from cloning, all right, with the Argo CD, the repo server, right? Then it compares the desired states, defining the manifest, defining the repository. Okay, it compares it with what is running in the cluster. And it decides, do I need to take an action? Is this out of sync? What action is needed? Can I enforce? Then it decides if it needs to enforce or it needs to just let it known out there. Sometimes you might want to have a manual sync, all right, or an auto sync. So where is an auto sync, right? It just corrects itself. But where is the manual one? It waits for you to come do it yourself. So it makes that decision, okay, by simply with this loop. It happens again, goes back, checks what is in the cloning the repository, keep on checking, keep on watching, and keep correcting, right? So if nothing happens, it does nothing, but the loop continues, it keeps on checking, keep on watching, deciding on what to do. So that's the right way to look at this reconciliation loop, all right? So I'll quickly go to the next slide here, which is where we're going to, do an actual bootstrapping of our cluster. Okay, first we will install Argo CD, into our AKS cluster. Then, having done this, we will access the UI. All right. Then, thirdly, we will deploy an Hello World application from Git. Okay. Then we also look at how we can simulate all right, simulate a drift. Okay, we introduce a drift and we'll, manually, we will try to correct this drift. Okay, so we can as well do the same drift, correcting it automatically. All right, so that's the flow of this live demo. Okay, so we need to pay attention to this part, to this demo. Is the last part that everything actually clicks in. All right, so we'll now go through the demo. I'll share, go through my CLIs, my Virtual Studio Code shell, and we'll walk you through this demo. All right. Okay. Let me get my editor. So I'm sharing now. Okay. So first of all, I'd like to just show you the Argo CD documentation of installation, how to bootstrap different Kubernetes clusters. We have different configuration. We have the high availability configuration where we have more than one replica of each component for high availability and resilience of the whole bootstrapping of the Argo CD. We also have the standard deployment, which is just one replica, okay, and it's just for the demos or quick repos. For lab environment, really, it's not recommended for production environment. So there are different ways to install this. We can use the manifest, we can use customize, and as well as I can as well also use the hem, which is a package manager for installing Kubernetes application. So having said this, I'll jump straight to the shell, my editor. So the first thing I'm going to do here is to create a dedicated namespace where Argo CD runs from. Okay. So I'm going to create this. I'll call it Argo CD. That has been created. Then I'll use the standard deployment, just installing Argo CD from the public manifests available. This is standard installation. It's going to be having just one replica. It's fine because, we just have a demo going on here and nothing more. But it's also good to understand that you can as well want to have a high availability kind of deployment. Okay, so we are beginning to see each component being deployed. You can see it fetches the manifest installing, different components, the service account, the rollback, cluster roles, config map, secrets, the different components, Argo CD notifications, deck server, the Redis server, the repo server, other components that are as well part of Argo CD. Notice that we emphasize on three major components, right? But there's still other components as well. Okay, so we're gonna look at what has happened in that cluster, in that namespace rather. So we'll do get all on the Argo CD namespace. Let's see if the component that's fully installed. So we have our installation completed. All the components are ready, and we can see that just one instance. This is the standard installation. Now, we ideally would need to, access the service, the Argo CD server, all right? So we will need to have like an ingress in the production environment to properly access this service. But in this demo, we are going to be forwarding this port to the local, and it should allow us to connect without exposing our service. All right. So we'll do the port forwarding using this command. As we progress in the series, we are going to, of course, look at different ways to expose the service in the right way to try to, get the best of things going on as recommended for Argo CD installation. But this is a quick demo to try to show us how to bootstrap the cluster. And while this is port forwarding, I'm going to open a new shell and continue the rest of my command so I don't break that port forwarding process. Okay, so if I navigate, if I navigate to the local port 888 I forwarded that to, we should be able to see the Argo CD server accessing it through the UI. So ignore this certificate error. Of course, we are doing port forwarding, and of course, we will look at other series how to properly set this up with right certificates, right, as required for a production environment. So this is Argo CD. We'll be required to enter the username and the password, and the default user is always admin. And the password, how do we fetch that? We'll get the initial password using this command. So we have our password. Let's put this password into there and see what happens, So looks like we are in. All right. Yes, we are in. This is the Argos server UI. We talked about we can interact with the application using the UI or the command line. So this is the friendly UI I'm going to use it for this demo, which is quite straightforward. We can hover around this and just try to familiarize ourselves with the environment. Okay. To create application, we will normally, open this UI and fill each information of our cluster here and the application we want to install. So we'll put all this information here and we will have our application running. So let's go through this quickly. Now I'm going to be relying on the Argo CD example, hello world example repo, okay, which is just to help us get started. So we're going to be assuming that we want to deploy this application, guestbook application. What do we need to do? We need to reference this Git repository. I will need to reference this part that has the application, right? You see here we have the deployment, of course, and also the service, which are listed within these parts guestbook. So what happens? We are going to pick the Git repository. We can as well create an application from different source, not just Git. We can also have hem. We can also have the OCI, right? So let's fill some information for the application. Let's call it guestbook. Okay. Project can be default. It can be any other available project if it's available in a cluster, right? So it's a single tenant. So we have it as default. Sync policy. In our overview of demo, we want to start with manual, just to understand that sync policy properly, and we'll come back, to look at how we can do similar thing using the auto sync, right? So sync option, one important thing for me is to auto create namespace, because if the namespace does not exist and you didn't tick that, its deployment will simply fail. So the git URL I copied before, I'm going to be pasting it here. Okay. Then I'm leaving as leaving main as head. Then the path will be guest book, right? From this root of the repo is guest book. Okay. So it navigates to the guest book part and deploys that. The cluster URL will leave as default. It's a single cluster. We are managing the name of the namespace. Where do we want to deploy this to? I'll deploy it to guestbook to tally with the name of the application, right? So I've filled all that is mandatory. Then I can as well edit as YAML and see the information that I've filled, right? And this will be kind of very important when we start creating with, say, customize or creating application from YAML as well. Okay, since we are doing from UI, this is what we are creating. We are seeing the YAML format of what we have just filled in. So I hit the create button, and it has created the application with some warning status saying out of sync. Okay, since we chose manual sync, is basically giving us an opportunity to synchronize manually. All right, since it's telling us it's out of sync, but it's not syncing by itself, you have to come and sync manually. And that's it, it's synced, right? So when it's sync, it means that what is defined in the Git repository is what is being running currently in the cluster. When it's out of sync, it simply means that whatever you have deployed, it doesn't have the same state as what you have in the Git repository. For our own case, our first let's talk through this. We have discussed all around what exactly we are doing. Oh, no audio. Oh, I didn't. Sorry, I've been talking without enabling audio. Some issues there. Oh, wow. Sorry about that, guys. I can quickly recap. Can quickly recap. Uh, quickly recap. So we were going through this process. Can you see me now? So we bootstrapped our we we bootstrapped our cluster with Argo CD, and we walked through the process of having a manual sync, where after creating the bootstrapping our cluster with Argo CD, we as well created an Hello World guest book application. We set the syncing to manual, all right, such that if there's any changing the state of the application for what is defined in the Git repository, all right, it gets flagged, all right, but the change does not really auto syncs back. It gives us an opportunity to come back and review the change. Say, for instance, it's a critical component. We don't want to auto sync. This is why these options are there. Some applications we probably don't want to auto sync them. Maybe they are related to infrastructure, because we can as well use Argo CD to manage infrastructure changes, and probably syncing might probably mean deleting the application or deleting the database. So those are there for critical reasons, right? But for this Hello World application, of course, we also were able to demonstrate how we can simply go to the UI, look at the status, and see if it's sync or not. And when there's differences, we can as well, understand these differences and see that is a tool, I go to the diff that shows you the exact difference. I'm just trying to walk through what I must have missed through the technical issue we had earlier on. Some audience weren't really hearing what I was saying, and at the same time, looks like they were not seeing some of the things I showed. That's why I'm taking a little bit step backward. I can just, for the purpose of this demo again, I can go ahead and try to edit the details, okay, and just show that manual sync. So I've turned off the auto sync, all right. So we can just go through that repo again. Yeah. So what I'll do here again is to scale up to 4, all right. Scale up to 4, okay, which will make our current state to be 4, and the desired state defined in the Git repository is 1. So we expect the Argo CD to flag this as out of sync, which it has done so. Okay, going back to where we identified that, looking at the Git repository, we see replicas here is 1, but we have changed manually to 4. So these manual changes, okay, we did expect um, it to be flagged. Okay, the loop, calculation loop will determine if it has to be a manual sync, if it was set as manual sync or auto sync. So where it's a manual sync, it's going to flag, then allow the user to come and sync if they want to. Where it's auto sync policy that was enabled, it automatically sync without asking the user to affirm, right? So out of sync, we go check out of sync. It shows you the exact difference. We can see, like we showed in the repo, difference is 1 to 4, right? This is very good for also troubleshooting and seeing also overview of events that's happened within the application, right? Within the guestbook application or any other application, be it in your production environment. This kind of highlights that difference, all right? So we will try again just to pinpoint the beauty of Argo CD. We're going to edit our application. This time around, setting it again to auto sync, right? So we go to sync policy, enable auto sync. It says application will automatically sync when changes are detected. That's when there's a difference, all right? Plug sponge resources. This will remove, you know, unrequired resources. It will just clean them off. It's called plunging. All right. So which I want to have. We also have self heal. So it will self heal where there are issues. It will sync back to what is defined in the Git repository, which is what is okay for me to have. Then we need to save this. All right. Save and confirm. Seems it's taking a little bit of time to sync. We're in the settings. I don't know if you can hear me now. Can you hear me? Okay, seems it has picked up. That's fine, because I haven't saved that. I can see it's already coming green, which means that it has rectified that out of sync automatically. It has done that automatically. So if we scale up, if you check our scale again, it's going to be 1. And if we decide to manually make a change, scale to 4 again, we did expect the difference to be automatically detected and just get synced back. Okay, so it's getting synced back. It's not even giving our opportunity for it to actually load, and it's just reading off and like saying, no, you're out of sync, I'm going to sync you. So that's what we expect, to have 1, even after setting to 4 manually. Yeah, because it's syncing back. You may also want to play around with the time of sync as you may want. Okay, so this is what I hope to demo today, showing us the Hello World application, really. So I hope you can hear me. No responding again, but I believe everyone can hear me now. All right. Yes, we have shown, we have shown the beauty of Argo CD, self-managing the Kubernetes cluster, managing the applications that were deployed through it that it knows about, and it having a common reference ground using the Git as its only true source. So thank you once more for joining this session. Our takeaways. So Argo CD, it's it runs inside the cluster. It runs right inside the cluster. And in terms of Git's changes, it takes Git as its only source of truth for all configuration. It automatically dictates changes. It can also automatically correct this change as drift. All right, when is auto sync is enabled. And lastly, all the application you see with defined on the UI, that was an application custom resource definition, but deployed with the UI. So you can, of course, follow us more for more content like this. In our next session, we'll do a deep dive into application custom resource definitions. Basically, we'll look at other ways, to manage our application, not just the UI, playing around with this manifest, more technical level. This is an introduction, and I really appreciate you for staying true to this session, despite the technical issue we had earlier on, but we're able to finish this up. Thank you for joining me. And is there any questions on the channel? Looks like no question at the moment. All right. I want to say thank you for joining the session. Really look forward to receiving all my colleagues back from MVP Summit in the USA. We'll probably continue in next session. I'll see you in this next series next week on this. Thanks for joining us. Bye.